Greetings, Mason Storm here. I often have a craving for fast food chicken hamburgers, but I decided not to drive 15 minutes today. Instead, I decided to make my own. Stay tuned to see how it's done. For our patties, I have 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of mustard, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of paprika. I have 1 cup of cornstarch, 1 egg, some salt and pepper, and 4 chicken breasts. We're going to begin our process off with using a hand blender to cut our chicken into smaller pieces. So we're just going to simply throw in all of our chicken, like so, and then put the lid on it. And once we have our lid properly affixed to the unit, we're going to be able to pull the cord to begin the blending process. Now it pulls a little bit harder than usual. That's because there's so much chicken inside of it. So we got to pull really hard to get up to terminal velocity to have the chicken cut. Oh my goodness, what just happened there? It just went flying. It's good it didn't fall out or anything, so try that again, take 2. So I'm just going to pull all this chicken out of here. And I'm actually going to have to pull it all out because I can't get the blender knob in the center there. So we'll just try 1 breast now. So we'll reassemble the blending unit and we'll proceed to pull the cord. Although it doesn't seem to be blending very well, it's just kind of turning the chicken around. So that's kind of unfortunate. So what we need to do from here, rather than attempting to pull faster and harder like I did for the last couple of minutes, I think it's time to get a cutting board out and cut our chicken into smaller pieces to make the blending process a little bit easier. And once we get our chicken all cut up, let's throw that in the hand blender here and give it another whirl. So we screw on the top and pull the cord, and what do you know? It's starting to actually work. This is a functional device that has the capabilities of acting as a food processor in the processing of chicken, which is just fantastic. Now I want to move on. I want to get past doing the blending of the chicken, but I should point out that I was getting greedy and I tried doing too much chicken even after cutting it up inside of it and was still having problems. So it was a bit of a struggle getting it all done, but it turns out that doing smaller amounts was the keys to success. Probably should have just used the electric food processor or the actual blender, and either of them probably would have worked a lot better and been a lot quicker, but I like doing everything manually, so that's just kind of how it happened. And once we got that all blended, we set it aside and move on to our next step. So now we're going to get a big mixing bowl, add in our processed chicken, and proceed to add in all of our spices. We got to make sure you add them all in, that we don't find 2 teaspoons of onion powder on your desk after you finish the meal. We're going to toss in our egg now as well, and then we're going to proceed to hand blend this and mix it all together. And it doesn't take very long to combine it all. We just need all the spices to be in there and the egg to kind of act as the binding agent. I know it looks kind of disgusting, looks like food for a feline, and I'm pretty sure that a cat would eat this. So now we're going to move on to the next step. So I got my plate here, and I'm just going to cover it with a little bit of the cornstarch. And then I'm going to actually fast forward really quickly through the first burger that I made because it didn't really turn out the greatest. So now we'll go over how to make the burgers. So we're just going to hand form them. We want them round, we want them thin, and the whole purpose of all the cornstarch here is to allow them to release from the plate, as well as it probably helps a little bit for our breading process, which we're going to do a little bit later. So that's essentially our process, is to hand form the patties and then cover them with a little bit of the cornstarch, because we're going to actually cover this with plastic wrap later on. And the cornstarch really helps with the releasing process. Although if I was doing this again, I would probably have used wax paper and not worried about the cornstarch, and maybe I'll try that next time, see if that turns out any better or worse. But once we have all of our patties all made up and we have them all covered with the saran wrap, then we're going to put them in the freezer, and we're just going to give them a little bit of a chill. You could probably freeze them, that would probably make things a lot easier, but I didn't have the patience for that. You know, I made these instead of going out for the 15-minute drive to get my fast food, And the second you're freezing burgers, sandwich patties, chicken patties in the freezer for several hours, it's definitely not quicker. Could probably walk there and back in less time, considering, so there's always that. Either way, it's time to move on to doing our breading process. We're going to be doing the standard egg wash and panko. Now, if you didn't want to freeze them, there's a way of making a breading that you don't have to use an egg wash, that you kind of make like a breading sauce and you just kind of pour it on the patties, and then you can kind of cook them right up and go right at it. But we're just going to crack a couple eggs into this container here, add a little bit of water to it, and then kind of mix it up a little bit, and that will be our egg wash, which I'm a pretty big fan of. I always thought that was a good breading method. So once we're done preparing our egg wash, it's time to actually start the egg wash process. So we simply take our patties out of the freezer, and I'm going to be using a lifter to get them off of the plate because they still stuck a little bit. Maybe could have used a little bit more of the cornstarch. Either way, into the egg bath they go, and once they're good and coated in the eggs, then we toss them in the panko and give them a good pressing of panko and make sure they're completely covered in panko. And after we get the first one done, we simply have to rinse and repeat the process for the rest of them. So I'm just going to increase the speed of the video here a little bit. And we're just going to get them all nice and covered. And once I got 4 of them, I'm going to go over to my air fryer. And I decided today that was the method I was going to use to cook them. It was either do it with the air fryer or do it with the pan and a little bit of oil. Both methods are probably pretty good. I don't know which is best, but I didn't cook them all today, so I'll be able to try the oil frying later, and hopefully they turn out good. So I just took the trays out of the fryer, and what I have here is just parchment paper. It's perforated, so it's got like holes in it, so hopefully it allows some of the air to flow through it okay. Although after using it, I determined that it probably doesn't, because it took significantly longer to cook in the fryer than I was expecting. I thought it would be a 10-minute flip 10-minute thing. So I started with 7 and messed around with that for a little bit, but probably the way to make it, especially with the paper in here, probably would have been 15 minutes aside and flip and then 15 minutes, but oh well. They all turned out fine in the end anyway, so. And once we're done cooking them, then we can move on to something a little bit more interesting. So our next step is going to be to make our sauce for our sandwiches. In order to do that, we're going to be using mayo, and we're going to be using mustard. Just standard issue yellow bottle mustard. And we just kind of mix that all up together, and that's it. That's our sauce. Although if you want to take it up to the next notch, what you want to do is add a little bit of the ghost pepper sauce to it. And that kind of makes it like the limited edition version of the chicken sandwich in reference that I haven't spelled out exactly. Either way, we just kind of mix that in, and there we go, we got our sauce. So now it's time to begin the actual assembly of our sandwiches. Now, I've already toasted the buns, and one of the tricks that restaurants use is you butter the bun before you toast it. And then we simply cover our top bun with our sauce, put the patty on the bottom bun, add a little bit of lettuce, put the top on the bottom, and you have yourself a nice chicken sandwich. And I think this is probably the best chicken sandwich I've ever made on my own. I definitely prefer this to the other method of just cutting a breast nice and thin or tenderizing it. So when you have like a whole piece of chicken, I think this kind of minced meat and assembly method makes for a more unified sandwich experience, similar to using ground beef as opposed to having a steak on a bun. So there's always that. So let me know in the comments below if you ever make any crazy chicken sandwiches like this, and if you do, what's your secret, if you are willing to tell me. If you like my content, feel free to like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.